Gary, do you know what you're unboxing?
Well, only what you told me, man. A chapter 2, but that's about it.
You look like you've shed a bit of weight.
Around 20 kilos.
20 kilos!
Let's have a look.
There you go. What do you reckon?
We see quite a bit of this kind of boxing, you know, like Specialized do a really nice job of their S-Works frames boxing.
Does it guarantee carbon quality?
It guarantees a high price tag.
That's nice.
And this is something I do like with chapter 2 is the carbon, you know, it does look pretty. The texture is quite a nice touch too. A love of mine, what is old is new.
What's that?
Threaded bottom brackets.
Yeah.
You know? Various stem spaces, fork and fork.
You haven't seen anything yet, Gary. I'm wondering what's going on.
Yeah, I'm just looking and considering. I was just going to get the box out of the way. I like these frames, there's no question. The paint job is fine, you know. Is this me, all this printed stuff? No, I don't like the printed designs, and when I look at it I can see it's got all the digital little, it's not clean, it's not crisp, and all the little lines, and that's not me. I'd much rather see proper artwork, you know. And the same, you know, the top of the fork, the digitalness of it, I don't like. Paint it, stencil it and paint it, but you know, you can't do this sort of stuff with stenciling and painting or custom painting without the price going through the roof. That's just my personal opinion. It's not a bad thing for the bike or anything like that. The carbon is always pretty on these, there is no question about that. You know, are we measuring to see if there's any offset between the bottom bracket cups? No, we're not, but it sure looks like it's, you know, it's well made, there's no question about it. Yeah, look, I've seen better finishes in the headset cups and that, but I'm a firm believer if the bearing sits in there and it sits there square, it's okay, you know. And the routing of the fork would leave some of the major brands for dead, you know, that at least the hole's neat and it's not an afterthought that's just been hacked out. And yeah, it's interesting just how the top's not cut square, you know, but I guess people are going to cut that down as well. The fork, the metal insert there, I can see, you know, there's a metal end cap, that wouldn't be my choice of how I'd make a fork, but you know, I see this on BMCs a lot, where they try to cover one end of the fork, and when the through axle gets screwed in, if it takes a knock, it pops the cap out and breaks it. At least, I guess that's a metal cap with a metal end on it. We'll get to see the seat post anyhow. Yeah, it was beautiful. Give it a little bath. It's a little interesting, the consistency. Well, it's exceptionally consistent, and you know, it's rare I could run across a top tube like that and not find any inconsistency. The joints coming through there, and you see it's dropped down to 0.5, which that's not it. So obviously there's a joint or something, it's finding a back wall. So obviously there will be where the joint is. Yeah, well there you go, there's nothing to complain about. You can see there's a lot going on up there.
Up where?
Up here.
Why is there a lot going on up there?
Oh, it's just there's lots of joins, layers, and like there'll be a join, there'll be glue and fillers wherever it finds this little back wall. But yeah, they're, you know, the only thing that what would I do to improve quality on this frame, just from a looking point of view, is, you know, having those bearing surfaces neater and nicer.
Mate, it looks pretty nice, pretty nice. This is the new Chapter 2 Rira. This, I believe, is a replacement for the Toa, one of their all-round race frames. Looks really good. The geometry's pretty normal. He's got 5 sizes in this one, ranging from an extra small up to an extra large, I think they call it. Really linear spacing between the sizes with the reach and the stack numbers. Quite large jumps between the sizes, which is nice. They're not super close to each other, so you've got a lot of leeway. Like the extra small is tiny, and and the extra large is really big. So it'll cover a really wide variety of people in terms of geometry. He's staggered, or he's linearly scaled the bottom bracket drop on this one, which is really nice to see as well. T47 bottom bracket. These are the new Mana bars as well, with a huge amount of flare. So 377 millimeters at the tops and 427 mil at the bottom of the drop. So a really big flare to the bar, which
How
is...
do you feel about that from a bike fitter's perspective?
Mate, it's great if you can cope with it.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I ride 36s now, and I can cope with them. But if you're a big, broad-shouldered guy and you're buying a bike like this for endurance riding and that sort of stuff, you might want to be very careful with this to make sure that you are not too narrow on the tops. But from an aero perspective and a race perspective, when you're in the drop sprinting, it is really good. It's very similar to the Envy Aero bar, the 35 on the top with the huge flare on it, and that's a really well-regarded bar in the industry for racing. A couple of other interesting features. I think it's got 34 mil, maybe even more tyre clearance. It's got a really wide fork, heaps of clearance, direct mount derailleur, and the thing that I love the most, a round seat post. Mate, it's got a 27.2 millimeter round seat post hole. Thank you, Mike. That's awesome.
Right.
Mate, everything else nowadays has got some sort of custom proprietary seat post, you know, like a D-shaped post that's specific to that bike. And so if you ever crack your seat post in a crash or something and you need to replace it 5 years down the track and the manufacturer has stopped producing them, you're in some trouble. With a round 27.2 mil post, they're available anywhere. You can get them, there's 50 different types. You can get different laybacks and different clamping systems. It's great. There's not as aerodynamic as a D-shaped post, and people will argue that it doesn't have as much compliance as well, but a really easy system to deal with. Compared to a Tarmac, which is probably one of the lowest bikes on the market, it is a little bit shorter and a little bit taller, so it's not super crazy aggressive. The medium here with the reach of 381 is a little bit shorter than your standard mediums or 54s, which have often got a 385, 386 millimeter reach, but we're talking millimeters. Okay. Yeah, there's not much in it. The stack at 545 is not crazily low either. Yeah, so it's nothing crazy. It's got a fairly short wheelbase, so it should handle very snappily, and is that a word? There's a
I'm using it
snappily. Snappily. There's a drink called Snapple in America, isn't there? Maybe that's what I'm referring to.
It's the latest word.
It's a snappily.
Describe bikes.
Snappily. So it is very snappily. It's got a short wheelbase, so it should be quite nimble. And yeah, mate, not much. Nimble and snappily. Yeah. That can be in the description.
So the numbers on Chapter 2's all-new, all-round race bike called the Reera, which stands for to be strong in the native language of New Zealand, being Maori, which is where Chapter 2 is HQ'd, although their frames, like 99.9% of other brands, are made in China. Before we get into the numbers, just to be clear that the frame set has been provided to the channel, so technically this is a sponsored video, although Chapter 2 and Mike, the owner of Chapter 2, they were not aware that I was taking the frame set in to see Gary at Carbon Steed, and the reason why I've done that this time around, because we haven't done that for maybe 12 to 18 months on the channel, is this is the last sort of first look frame set I'll ever do on the channel, and I wanted to go out with no stone unturned. And thankfully for my relationship with Chapter 2, Gary, who's not always favourable, seemed to be mostly favourable towards the Chapter 2 Reera. And the numbers on the Chapter 2 Reera are as follows. Firstly, it comes in two colours. There's a blue and a white fade. The frame set comes in one carbon layout, which is predominantly T1100 or Toray 1100, and can be pre-ordered right now for $2,549 USD, and the bars at $500 USD. And medium frame with, you know, hangers and bolts and stuff. We've got 1 kilo and 50 grams. Uncut fork with the old mates, 410 grams. Bars, 38 width at the tops with the old mates, 390 grams. And the tyre clearance is up to 34 millimeters in the front, as Neil specified, and 32 in the rear. And I feel worthy of note, since their inception in 2017, this is Chapter 2's third iteration of their all-round race bike. So they're kind of following that upgrading or updating their race bike, all-round race bike, that is every 3 years, which for a smaller brand, for more of a boutique brand, is pretty rare. Even a lot of mainstream brands don't tend to be able to keep in line with the 3-year rule because it's costly, it's time consuming to do so. So I think that's testament to Chapter 2's growth mindset, wanting to improve their product for customers. I'll catch you in the next video.